There's a lot to slackline, and it's really hard to capture the feelings you get from any particular instance. But the experiences, the people, and the sense of accomplishment are unlike anything else. Each week, join me for a slackline story, told by slackers from all over, in an exploration of some of the more salient things that make this pastime so unique. This first series is about rigging, since it's arguably one of the first things you learn how to do when slacklining. Whether it's a 2-inch ratchet or a padded frost knot in your backup webbing, rigging necessarily takes place before the actual slacklining, and sometimes takes longer than the slacklining itself. So it's the first part of 3 that I consider foundational to the slackline experience. Ready for some Rigamarole? Storytellers were not informed of the topic ahead of time. All they knew entering was they would be recording an interview.
Stay. Hey, sit. Stay. Stay. All right.
So rigging wise,
I'm not very good at explaining.
Yeah,
But
I've got a good story, I guess. I could rip off.
What is your first name?
Davis.
And how long have you been slacklining?
I've been highlining for 8 years. And that's not right. 7 years. Coming up on 8.
What is your go-to slackline?
I'll answer threaded tube then. That's like my go-to, I'd say. As far as like, if I were able to take one line and put it in my backyard, it'd be the Yosemite Falls 250. It's just exposed. Bomber. It's the best bolted line in Yosemite. The 250 is 2 sets of 2, like on the back of a boulder, and it comes up. I think originally when they bolted that, it was like use 2 and then back up to the other 2. Those kind of like schools of thought have changed. It used to be like, these are the bolts and these are the backup bolts. Now we're like, let's just grab all those. I don't remember which summer this was. It was maybe 3 summers ago, so 2016 or so. And I had just built out my van, and my friend Dominic was moving from Fort Collins to Washington, like San Juan Islands, Washington, so like as far west and as far north as you can go in the country. Almost to like Squamish. Okay. Like you can see Canada from the other side of the river. And so we decided to do this big road trip where he drives his truck and I drive my Sprinter van to Washington, and then we left him there and I came back. So it was a big road trip, like, you know, the inaugural build-out road trip in the van. And like we didn't go straight to Washington, we went west and then all the way up the Highway 1 up through California, Oregon, Washington. This like big lengthy trip, right? And like he's in a big ass truck and I'm in a big ass van. And so we're like convoying, just the two of us, very unorthodox. And he can slackline. We lived together and I had a line in the backyard. And so naturally he like picked it up. And he like has a mind for outdoor sports and rigging and stuff like this. So I'm like, all right, like we can highline on this trip, but it's going to be like a progression of like, you know, kind of teaching you some stuff at home, and then like as we go out west, like we'll stop in Moab and we're gonna go to the Fruit Bowl and rig a line. So that was our like first stop, was to hit the Fruit Bowl. And so by the time we got to the Fruit Bowl, he was like, knew the systems and knew how to do it, but didn't know if he was right when he did it, kind of a thing, you know what I mean? Like he was in that stage. And so I'm like, you know your stuff, like, we're gonna get there, and there's probably gonna be other people there, and there's definitely gonna be a guy that, like, says something to the effect of, like, you're not doing this right, and here's how I do it, and I'm like, don't listen to that guy. Like, you know your stuff. And so, sure enough, like, we get to rigging, and, like, I'm doing my thing, and when me and Dom rig a highline together, it's really, like, me rigging a highline, and him kind of, like, holding the ropes, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I'm, like, in my zone, getting this all set up. We're like quick 1-day stop, so I'm trying to like get this line up and slack line and go. And so sure enough, I'm like mid-rig, and I look over, and like some dude is at Dom's anchor, you know, like messing around. And I finish my side and go over, and it was like some sort of debate about sliding X's and how they worked. And we get it sorted out. We do it the way I want to do it. And, Highline, it was great. And we continue on our journey west. I think our next stop would have been Yosemite. It was summer.
Yeah.
And so the valley was packed, and I'd never been during the summer before. And like just to get in was like an hour of traffic.
Yeah.
We drove his truck and my van, both very big vehicles. And there's like a bunch of Europeans in the valley, right? And so like all these Europeans would pack like 5 into a juicy rental van, you know? And then like we pull up in the F-250 and
Individually.
And they're like, wait, so it's just you in there, and it's just you in there, right? And we're like, yeah, you know, yeah. And they're like, so much space. Like, what are you guys doing? You tell they're like, after we left, you know, they're like, idiots. So, like, we've rigged one Highline together, and, like, Dom has demonstrated that he can, like, put a sliding X down on the rock and, like, grab a webbing and, like, put it into a web lock safely and do that. He's, like, not sure if it's right. He doesn't know how to, like, make everything redundant or, like, tie off tails, but he can, like, serve as the person on the other side of the line, right?
Yeah.
He, like, knows that process. So I'm like, all right, we're rigging Yosemite Falls. And we've known each other for a really long time, so, like, and we've played outside for a really long time, so we have, like, a good partnership. And so that's why I was comfortable being like, all right, like, we're going for it. And so the two of us strap up our packs. We can't get a spot in Camp 4, so we're parked, like, out of the valley in the gravel pit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wake up at, like, you know, in the dark and, like, drive to Camp 4 parking lot. 2 guys for the Yosemite Falls line is, like, a lot of freaking weight on your back. So you need, like, I don't know, it's, like, 200 feet of static to wrap down. And then, like, 50 feet of static or so on the other side to wrap down, and then a Highline rig, jugging gear, all that stuff. And so, like, we're strapped up. All my static rope was 11 mil. Fat. And so you know what the hike entails. It's freaking gnarly. It's like Mordor. And we get to the falls, and you end up on the tensioning side when you, like, first approach the line. And the plan was to set the anchor up together on that side, and then I was going to walk around. It's like a mile or something. You, like, walk around, cross the river, and then you get to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to wrap down the, like, 200 feet, or I think it's like 250. It's a long freaking way. Down from the tree to the static side. We tag the line and then pull it over, and I was going to roll over and then check the shit, you know, and, like, and so I say to myself internally that, like, you know, if it doesn't work out, I can always just jug up the 200 feet and hike back around and look at it and do whatever. And so I'm feeling pretty good about this. We've got an anchor up. We've got all the gear. I'm like, all right, man, you know, like, good luck. I'm out of here. And I get to the tree. I start wrapping down. I see Dom. He starts wrapping down. And now we're at the top of the falls, like, before it drops over to a waterfall. So you're, like, in between you is, like, 30 feet of, like, raging river. The falls were moving.
Can't hear anything.
No. And the first time I rigged that line, the falls weren't raging. And so you could hear your partner, and the river wasn't that big. Also, like, when the falls are that big and the wind's coming up over, it's like a literal monsoon. Because of the, like, mist off.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was coming either. So I'm, like, wrapping down my line, and, like, all of a sudden, I'm instantly drenched head to toe. And so I'm, like, trying to get my rain jacket on. I get my rain jacket on. I'm already, like, drenched to the bone. Get down to the riverbed. And so I'm, like, on the rope, but, like, not really. Like, I'm on my 2 feet. And the plan is Dom chucks the tagline to me. You have to jug back up, like, 40 feet and kind of, like, reset and then go to the anchor. And then he comes up 40 to his anchor. And so that's the plan. We both get there. There's, like, little to no communication. There's, like, yelling and hand signals, right? And, like, at the fruit bowl, that, you know, this isn't really a barrier. You know, you just, like, And so we hadn't gone in depth into, like, tagging lines and, like, that kind of stuff. And so he's got 2 100-foot pieces of tag line in a bag connected to the rope bag. And he chucks it. This is first try. Chucks it. And it goes into the water, and it's short, right? And then so the water starts moving, and I'm thinking, like, oh, no big deal, try again. Well, Dom is on an eddy to rappel, because he didn't have a gree-gree, and I used mine to rappel. And so he's on an eddy, but he's, like, locked. And so he chucks it, and now, like, rope is going out fast because of the water, and he goes to grab it, and he's short, and he can't grab it. And I'm yelling, like, grab the rope, grab. And he's trying, and he just, like, can't get it. And it down the falls it goes. The entire tagline. And so he, me being like, the kind of leader on the trip, instantly looks to me and gives me the face of like, now tell me what to do. And I'm like going through my head, I'm like, okay, we can like use the webbing to tag it and like try that, but like I don't think my piece was long enough. Like if it's 120 feet, I had like 130 feet of webbing or something. Yeah. So I didn't think it was going to be long enough. Maybe we could like untape it and like attach the webbing to the rope. And then I'm thinking about how to communicate this to him through the river, and he's going like this, and I just went finger across the throat, dude. We're done, man. It's over, man. And so I jug back up into the freaking monsoon, the 200 feet.
Yeah.
And I collect my rope, I'm like looking pretty pro, like on the side of the cliff, drenched in like high-tech rain gear and like coiling my 300 feet of rope, right? And I like come back to the bridge, and this like 50-year-old married couple goes, "Wow, that was just amazing what you did there." I'm like kind of worked up about the whole thing, and then that like snapped me into like, I guess that was pretty cool what I just did, And like, I had already walked that line, so I wasn't like devastated by any means. Man, when I got back to Dom's side, he was distraught, right? Because he figured I'm gonna come back steaming, like, what the fuck, man? We just drove 20 hours, It was like a lot culminated into this moment of us rigging the falls, and we like had an anchor up. It was like we thought it was gonna happen, especially Dom did. Damn. So he's pissed at himself and like very embarrassed. And the whole reason why I told this story is because there was like this lesson that I was able to share with Dom that was like, what we're doing is like really freaking hard to accomplish, and like it doesn't work out sometimes, and like it was one little hitch in our system, and like back to the cars we went, and it was just like a sobering moment of like, we f***ed up, but it was rough. He was like absolutely defeated, and like dishonored his whole family. Like he was actually mortified. Like we had to like sit down and have like an interpersonal conversation about like it's okay to fail, and like what we're doing is really hard, and like it's no big deal. And we just got absolutely stomped on in Yosemite. Like couldn't find camping. Any crag we went to was like closed for falcons, or like you couldn't find a place to park. Dom got front-ended by some guy. Some guy stopped on the road and backed up and hit him. Like the world was just against us on this trip. We climbed Half Dome after we rigged the falls. Oh. And we summited Half Dome, and it was like the turning point. Yeah. Oh, we did something. Nice. So that's one of my greater defeats in highlining, I'd say. That's the nice thing about highlining. That's why our margins are so good. It's because we can like stand at the top of the cliff and be like, if we did this a little different, it might be better. Trad climbing, you're like, is this good? I don't know,
Well, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man, thanks.
Much appreciated.
I forgot where we were for a second.
Thank you, Davis, for your inspiration. Follow Davis's adventures on Instagram at DoDaily. Visit our YouTube page for the spelling on that, as well as bonus video and photos.